Well, hello and welcome to Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. This is Sandy, and this is my Thursday Night Lives. So I totally appreciate you guys coming in. And let's just say Julie says, not sure if you noticed the sound on some of your posts today were very soft. That's interesting. Um, because I usually always keep it at the same volume. So that's interesting that they were sounding softer than normal. But anyway, let's say hi to Penny, hi to Julie. And Julie says that right now it's fine. So weird. Technology sometimes. If this is your first time of ever being on one of my lives, I appreciate you coming in. I usually keep them at about a half hour because I know people are busy. And Troy Sutton is here. Hello, Troy. How are you? And tonight we were talking about frost because it is fast approaching. I did a video today about frost, and I thought it would be interesting because there's a lot more about frost because I don't like my videos being, a half hour long. There's a really great book. This is one of my books out of my library. And Ann Dale is here. Hey, Ann girl. And this is one of my books. It's called The Gardener's Guide to Frost. And outwit the weather and extend the spring and fall seasons. It's a great book. It goes really in depth on what frost is and what it isn't, and how it can affect how cold weather, even though it's not frosted, can affect your plants. And I just found it really fascinating. I've had this book in my library for a very long time. And if you want some advanced reading on frost, it is your book. Now, I live in the north, and so my frost is going to be much sooner than many of you guys in the chat right now, just because my zone is zone 4. Now, for A or B, depending on where you live in town, we did have a frost warning last week. At my house, absolutely nothing. We didn't have any frost at all. At the community garden, zucchinis, the leaves just on the edges. And then other people I talked to, it frosted their entire garden. It's interesting, depending on where you live, your elevation just within town. If you got out of town in the low areas or on the prairie, for the most part, it frosted. And frosted as much that it really killed the tomato plants, the pepper plants. And that is a sad thing because you work all the entire year, the summer, to get those beautiful vegetables. So unless you covered them well, it was not good. Penny says, I need to purchase that book for myself. Sandy, you know, love books. Thank you for sharing this one with me. Yeah, we both love books. It is just crazy. Now, Anne says, the crazy weather is very interesting. It is. And really, 75% of the entire world has frost or frost and snow. And so for the most part, even in the southern United States, it's going to frost. Now, if you have followed my channel, you know that I live in 2 different places. So I am actually in exactly a month, I am going to Yuma, Arizona. Does it frost there? Such a rare occurrence. Now, some people say that it's actually even snowed there. I have never seen that. My mom and dad have been going there for 25, I think actually it's even getting closer to 30 years now. My dad says he's never seen the snow. So it's just one of those places that I garden here and then I get a garden again. Down there, I don't actually have to worry about frost. Now, the coldest part of that year down there is from about Christmas to January 10th. They always say that Yuma is capable of frost for 2 weeks a year. And you just cover your plants. That's all you have to do there. It's not going to be ever going to be hard frost. Now, tell me, how many of you have seen frost yet this year? Because I haven't actually seen frost yet. I mean, my zucchinis, questionable, but I never actually saw it. I know, only 2 weeks. It is just the craziest thing ever. And they affect different things. But even in the summertime, have you ever had one of those summers and it's cooler, the nights are cooler, and your tomatoes just do not set? And you're going, why are my tomatoes not setting? Am I not having any tomatoes? If your nights get below 60, sometimes even below 65, a lot of times those little flowers will fall off your tomato plants, or they're just too cold and they can't be pollinated. So I find that interesting. Anne says, no frost in North Carolina. Julie says, some here, zone 10B. We pretend that we have 2 weeks possible frost. Never happens. That's like you, never happens. Penny says, not me here. It was 83 degrees today. It was actually like 86 degrees here in Wyoming today. Right now it's 81. So you can't hardly complain about that. But what can you do to protect your plants from frost? For a long time, I just used sheets and blankets because I didn't have any like row covers, things like that. But even if you didn't have those, do you have any 5-gallon buckets? Now, a big tomato, probably that won't cover, your 5-gallon bucket won't cover that. But there's a lot of things like all your peppers you could cover with 5-gallon buckets. You know, onions don't really care. Carrots don't usually care. If you had potatoes, though, all the tops of those would frost very easily. And so those are things you have to think about when you've worked all this summer to get all these vegetables and you just don't really want to waste anything. Now I have honeydews and cantaloupes. I did pick the watermelons the other day. They're just those little mini watermelons because it's hard to grow watermelons here. I mean, if you grow them in the greenhouse, that's a different thing. But growing them outside, especially if our nights are cool that summer, it's very difficult to get big watermelons. So I decided to grow little tiny watermelons. And I picked 3 of them. There is a couple other ones, but they're not very big, so I just left them on there. But my cantaloupes are the most beautiful things you ever seen in your life. I mean, they're just like humongous. All the netting that cantaloupes get is all the way around there. They just haven't turned tan. They're still underneath that netting. It's green. So I am waiting. So if it looks like frost, I am covering them with sheets and blankets and anything else I think I need because they're going up a trellis. And so I think I can just drape things over them. And when they told us we might have frost, it said it was going to be 39 degrees. And I thought, it's not going to get cold enough to kill my cantaloupes. And it didn't. Oh, look who's here. Charmaine, how are ya? It's nice to see you here. We were talking about frost. Now, speaking of frost, I thought we should have a contest. So you can answer in here. You can answer in the chat later. You could answer in my frost video. And what you need to say is the date that it's going to frost and what time you think it's going to frost. Because I can look on my weather thing and it'll tell me when it hit 32 degrees so that I know it's frosting. And you can win a $25 Amazon gift card. So I figured anybody can win. So you just have to think about it. Now, let me give you some hints. Our since we're zone 4, it's usually September 15th that they decide on average that we might have frost after that. When I look at my calendar, on my weather calendar, it does not look like before the 15th we have any chance whatsoever of frost. Just to give you that idea. And so you can answer any time before it frosts, and then I will go back and I will find who is the closest. You can't go over that date and time. So like if it frosted on the 22nd at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you said the 22nd at 6:30, you're past, and that doesn't count. So the person that was closer on the other side would be the winner. And I just thought it would be fun. And I'll do some posts when people start guessing, and we can kind of keep track of who is going to be my winner. Now, could it be all the way at the end of September into October? It could, but really not very likely in Wyoming. But other things that you could cover. If you had some extra straw bales, and say you're growing sweet potatoes, and they're not big enough yet, you could put those straw bales around and then maybe put either plastic or some old windows over top of it, something to hold that heat in. And that would make it real easy. If you have portable cold frames that you can move, use PVC and plastic, you could do it. Anything that's going to just hold that heat in. Now, like when you have clouds across the sky, it does make it so it stays warmer than if the night is really cool and there's no clouds in the sky. You're more likely to get frost than you would if it was all cloudy. Henry, hello. Henry's got the fun video. It's a trail cam, and this deer just comes bouncing all the way through it. I watched it like 3 times. And Melanie, how are ya? Gosh, just so many good friends are popping in tonight. I appreciate that. And we're talking about frost. So, Henry, have you had frost? Because you're way up there. You could have frost already. So far, nobody in the chat has had frost. They had frost in other parts of my town, but at my house, I had no frost whatsoever. Not like no place. And I have a really high hill, and it comes down, and sometimes when it's cold or cool, that cold air goes down, and in that lower part, it'll frost right along there. No, I didn't have any. I'm so excited. And so there are things that you can quickly just cover your plants. A trick is to water your plants when it gets nighttime. You know, don't do it in the dark because you might trip over your hose. But at supper time, you could go out and water your plants, and then you could still cover them. And that thermal mass of that water, which is a really weird thing to me because my brain says the water would get cold and it would make it so the plants would frost easier. But it's not true. It has this chemical reaction thing, and it keeps the plants warmer. In Yuma, in the citrus groves, if they think it's going to be anywhere close to frosting, they have these big fans that move the air around. And I find that very interesting. Now, I do have to keep watching because some of my apples do taste better after a good frost. But most of them I need to pick before it's going to frost. And so for me, every morning I'm looking at the weather. Just because if there's a change coming through that wasn't predicted a few days before, I'm going to go out and pick all those apples because I have a lot of apples. I've actually been making applesauce with apples that have fallen down because we've had some really windy days. Man, that applesauce is so incredible. And I've been using just different, whatever apples fall down. So they're all kinds of different ones. So good. Nancy, hello. How are you? Henry says, no frost here. October is when we have frost most years. Oh, so you're past me even, because ours is September 15th. Now, in my video today about frost, I did talk about Some garden plants can't, they, I mean, a frost would kill them for sure. But even getting down to 40 degrees, like an eggplant, can't go under 40 degrees. It it would really die back. It's just too cold for it. Oh, and it says, "Oh, I can smell those apples cooking." Penny says, "We are predicting frost between November 11th and November 22nd around 12 a.m." Wow, you got lots of season left. And sometimes it gets to the end of the season and you're just done. I mean, you've canned and frozen and dehydrated, and you still have vegetables. And it's just like, somebody come get these. Just come get them. Jermaine says, "Hi, y'all. I remember they used to turn on water systems in Florida when it was going to freeze in order to save the oranges." Yeah. Yeah, there's the overhead water. They'll turn fans on. They used to have these what they called smudge pots, and it would they had fire in them, and the smoke would come out, and it would help with frost. So you have to have a lot of those if you had very much area, and it has to be safe. And he says, "Yep, I do." Awesome. Now I like when it gets about 2 weeks before my frost date, because everybody should know their frost date in the fall more than the frost date in the spring, if you ask me, because if it accidentally frosts later in the spring, you can always replant. But in the fall, there's no replanting because it's the end of the season. Now, there's frost, light frost, moderate frost, heavy frost. And there's different temperatures that scientists have come up with. If it's 29 to 32, that's a light frost. That can kill some plants, but other ones it will not kill. Moderate frost is 25 to 28. So it's killing some of them, but not all of them. But if it's under 25 degrees, most vegetables are toast. I mean, you can cover them up and you can do a lot of things, and that can help. It can really hold in that moisture. But once it gets under 25 degrees, it is tough, you know. Oh, and that's true. Charmaine says the Old Farmer's Almanac gives frost dates. And you can Google it. You can put in your, say frost dates, put in your zip code, and it will give you all kinds of information. I have found that just like when the weather comes through my town, certain areas are more prone to maybe getting hailstorms, and the other parts aren't very prone to get it. They frost more on that part and not the other part of town. So if you talk to the gardeners around you, they can be a wealth of knowledge for you. Um, if you don't know any garden friends by you, go down to your extension office, and that can really help. Or join a Facebook group that's gardening in your area, and you can just say, "Hey, what should I be looking out for? What should I see that um, could help me so I can cover those plants?" Because what frost does, it gets so cold. If it gets cold really fast, it literally can explode those cells inside your plant, and it's killing your plant. If it slowly through the night gets cold, a lot of times it can help you. That slowness can make it so your plant survives. So I find that's kind of interesting. And it's that cold temperature. I know it sounds like freezing temperatures and cold temperatures should be the same. It's weird because like water melts at 32 degrees, but water does not necessarily freeze at 32 degrees. It may take it all the way down to 25 degrees, 20 degrees before it ever freezes. So it's a weird thing when it comes to water and freezing and frost. And so that's why this is a great book. It's a great resource. It has just so many things and all kinds of ideas on how to protect your plants. Penny says, when I planted my fall winter vegetables in raised beds, I went ahead and layered my mulch down around the planted and covered with all my banana leaves from my trees, because Penny has banana trees and banana leaves are great. They decompose, they compost down. They are fabulous. I never throw any of my banana leaves away down in Yuma. They're always getting composted because they are great in your compost piles. So you got to watch for that lethal, deadly frost, right? It's just, um, but if you got tender plants, and even in my video, I said, if you're in an area that you have a really short growing zone, you know, zone 2, zone 3, and it's short. If you plant vegetables that are more cold hardy, and a lot of magazines anymore will tell you this is a very cold hardy seed. You can Google cold hardy seeds to plant in the fall and winter. It will give you a huge list of plants that will just withstand. Now, is there a cold hardy tomato? Yeah, that's questionable. But there are plenty of cold hardy carrots and brassicas and lettuces and different herbs that can withstand being cold. They don't grow very fast, but they don't die either. And then things warm up and they are better. And they're great for if you're trying to grow all year round in like a greenhouse. And then there's things you can do, even if you don't want to heat your greenhouse, that can keep it warmer in there. And it's interesting that how things affect frost. If you're by a lake or a river, you're much less likely to have frost than somebody that's 2 miles away from that lake. We have a part in Montana, it's called Flathead Lake, and they literally grow Bing cherries. They have fabulous cherries there, the big sweet cherries, and the rest of Montana can't do that. Most of Wyoming can't do that. But that thermal mass of that water changes the whole complexity of that area. And so it's zoned differently. And humidity can change things. If you have a wall or a shed or concrete, you can grow more tender plants that because that heat that comes off of those rocks or the concrete or just the building, and it can save plants that may not have been able to survive that frost. And I like that. It's just a matter of planning your garden and planning what you want to do and how you want to protect, and for how long do you want to protect those plants. Henry says, grow zone 4 in my neck of the woods. Yeah, and see, I'm a zone 4, and so I grow different things than when I'm in Arizona. Now, I mean, there's tomato, I can grow tomatoes both places, but there's other things that I can grow down there that I'm not very successful here, like sweet potatoes. I just don't have a long enough season for sweet potatoes here. Not that I haven't grown sweet potatoes, but they're not very big. They're like this big and they're about this big around, and I want big honking sweet potatoes. H. Sawyer says, that's good to know. Awesome. Glad you're here. Now, there are some crazy things that gardeners do to help with frost. I read a thing, and I think it might be in this book, or I just read an article. I can't really tell you which one. And people would literally, they grow the raised beds, but it's tilted. So it's higher on one side than the other. And so it's tilted this way. And because it's tilted in the direction that it's going to get more sun, um, they say they're less likely to frost in that raised bed. I don't know if that's true or not. I really don't know. But people do that. I would just rather cover the raised bed and not have to worry about those things. But I mean, people do a lot of things. Sometimes they know it's going to frost. They'll pile bricks around a certain plant for a few days so that thermal mass will heat it. People will take their walls of water that they used in the spring and put them back over plants. Chef, how are you? In zone 10A. Don't really have frost here. When I'm in Yuma, Arizona, I don't really have frost either. And I like it. Though I don't like their summers. It's way too hot. So, hence I live in 2 different places. And I like it. If your plants have enough moisture, it can make a big difference. That's why watering them if you think it's going to frost that day. Are you in Yuma too? Yes. We'll have to meet up. We'll be down there. We leave on the 11th of October. So we're there a couple days later. I am teaching painting art at the fair on, I think it must be the 17th, 18th, the Saturday and Sunday, whatever that is. So awesome. Too much heat here. It is a lot of heat. But when I go down and I plant my gardens in the wintertime, it's lovely. I mean, seriously lovely. Rudy, how are you? Okay, now I like to keep my lives for 30 minutes. Tell me any of the things that you have done to protect your plants from frost. I mean, people come up with a lot of crazy fun things. Buckets, plastic, blankets, sheets, glass windows, just all kinds of stuff. Now, when it gets close to 30 minutes, I have to just run. I have to go to a community garden meeting. I am their treasurer and I have to do my treasurer's report, but I'm not staying for the whole thing because then I am going to an art show because I have a whole section that is just my art at the art center. And I'm totally excited about it. I did 3x3 paintings. Well, some of them are bigger, but there's 40 3x3 paintings of vegetables. And I love it. So if you want to see what they look like, you can go to Ava Center in Gillette, Wyoming. And they should have a picture someplace on there. And because I know you can get them from there. They ship them. So I'm totally excited about that. Now, Julie says, kitchen herb garden. Put them out in February. Now next week when I have my live stream, we're talking about the seedlings that I'm growing to take down to Yuma. Because what I've found is it used to be that Yuma Nursery had a lot of like tomato plants and stuff when we first started going down there. But now a lot of times they don't have hardly any vegetables until it's more like January. Well, I want to grow mine right from the beginning because I have raised beds there and I have a garden there. And then I have 2 other little garden spots. And so I have tomatoes and peppers and onions and leeks and cabbages and broccolis. And this week I planted all my watermelons and pumpkins, cucumbers, zucchinis. So next week I will show you how they are doing and how I'm actually going to move plants from Wyoming to Arizona to plant in my gardens. That's true. Lowe's always has a lot, but I'm just not willing to pay $4 to $5 for one tomato plant when I can literally buy more than one package of seeds for that. And so, like Ann and I, with Andale Homestead, we make seed snails. So I can have a lot of plants in a little space, and we're going to talk about that next week. But everybody, I got to go. It's 30 minutes, and it's just like one after another after this. of things I got to be to. I so appreciate you guys. Have a great, great week. See what you can learn about frost before it frosts at your house, because you work so hard all summer long. Make sure you get all the benefits out of those gardens. And I'll see you next time.